Warning. Listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
And welcome to another episode of Influencers Radio. You know, sometimes you read about a person, you try to understand exactly what they do. And there's words out there that we hear every single day that have lost their meaning, lost really the power of what they are. And one of those words is depression. And I read things, especially, as we're talking here, recent passing of Robin Williams and depression that comes up. The topic comes up around there. And depression, you realize that the meaning of that word has become ubiquitous and not as much meaning. And we don't think about really going deeper into the layers of what that means. And it can mean many things to different people. And because that has come out in the news recently, I see a lot of people that deal in that area, professionally, counselors, psychologists giving their opinions and, a lot of them are very clinical, very technical, reasons that things occur. And then I discovered my guest today who has a very simple, I say simple, very simple, but a very clear. The clarity around the things that she talks about is it kind of wipes that word depression away because it really gets into what the symptoms that we recognize that some people call depression, some people call overwhelm, some people call stress that can often make up that term that people just kind of loosely throw around as depression. Now, my guest today is Debz Cooper. She is from New Zealand and it just really, I could listen to her for hours and hours because of the way that she can explain things and the way that, I don't know how many V8 moments I get listening to, her talk about, the problems that people have. And you start realizing, wow, a lot of people go through the same stuff that I go through. When you're sitting by yourself and you're thinking, man, oh man, woe is me. And you realize that there's a lot of very similarities of what people go through, maybe different circumstances, but every now and then, just about everybody has that hurricane, that tornado that just blindsides them, that regardless of how you're able to handle situations, handle stress at different levels, everyone has that one thing that goes above and beyond what they're ready for. And it can have a tremendous impact on people's lives. And perhaps it's had an impact on your life. Perhaps it's had an impact on your family, friends, co-workers' lives, but it's something that touches everyone. And that's when things can get very dangerous and life-changing. And that's the one thing that Debz is remarkable at, helping people recognize, to find that light, to find that path out of something that they think may be insurmountable, and make decisions that they normally wouldn't make and that could affect them and others around them for a very, very long time. So, Debz, I hope you don't mind. I won't give you I've got what you are. You're international. I think one of 6 master certified facilitators for the Deep Martini method, in human behavior. But those words almost lose meaning after talking to you and hearing the things that you do and the clarity that you bring to this. And what I'm really looking forward to is you making some really big differences for people over the next few minutes that we're going to be talking here. So welcome to Influencers Radio.
Thank you so much, Jack, for having me. And I loved your little introduction. It was inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're the one that inspired it, so feel good about that. So let's talk about this, because I really want to put a picture. I want to paint a picture because there's everyone I don't know of anyone that hasn't experienced something that was above and beyond what they normally could handle, right? And sometimes that's really big. Sometimes it's not. But, we're talking about circumstances of, spouses coming and just blindsiding you with, hey, I'm leaving, or even bigger and weirder news, right? We're talking about things that are happening at work. Essentially, it's where your reality, the things that you thought were real and the expectations that you had that, your life was going along in this particular pattern, all of a sudden you realize that's been a complete perception that you had wrong, that other things have been occurring, right? So let's talk about that, kind of the put a face on this, and so people can realize that, I see something like that's happened to me, or I know someone that happened to, because it's touched just about everyone.
Yeah, it has. And depression, and I will say depression because we talk about Robin Williams. Depression is a label that we throw out there, and depression can come in many forms and many levels. So as a child, you might fail your school exam and you might get depressed. And you might get depressed there. You might be in a relationship and you find your partner cheats on you, so you're going to get depressed. You go for a job interview and you don't get that job. You get depressed. You think you're going to do a big sale at work and you're going to earn $10,000 commission on doing maybe 2 or 3 hours of work, and you don't get it. So you get depressed. So depression can be sitting in everybody's eyes, and it can be at a greater extent to a greater degree, to a smaller degree. But I think the key is whenever you have an unrealistic expectation that life should be this way, and it doesn't happen, that's where your depression comes in. And, with the depression of Robin Williams, look, that was a tragedy in hearing how he ended his life. However, the blessings that have come out of the Robin Williams death, I think, are far greater than his passing. We've constantly, I personally have educated my daughter on who Robin Williams is. We had a weekend last weekend of just watching his movies, Good Morning Vietnam, Mrs. Doubtfire. Now, my daughter's 14 and never saw Mrs. Doubtfire, and she was, literally peeing with laughter of watching this incredible man of doing this. And so it educated my daughter in this, but it's also got people talking. What is depression? Who's out there? Okay, if you're feeling like you're overwhelmed, that's another way of depression, another wording of depression. It's got people talking, and that to me, a good education source where people are communicating is an amazing blessing that comes out of such a, unfortunate situation.
It is, and I think you really you put a spotlight on there with probably you may not have even realized it when you talk about when you're a kid and the grades. So I can remember when I was a kid and I got an F on a report card, right? And I got to say, it knocks the wind out of your sails. And I think about that now, and the relativity of that is I was probably more depressed and wanted to curl up and just hide away more, when that happened than as an adult when I, lost a $50,000 deal. Right. And a lot of people might think, well, wait a minute, that's nothing compared to, what are you talking about? But as a child, because of the circumstances around, that was overwhelmed to me. What are my parents going to say? I need to run away from home. I got to, I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't, how can I just go away? I want to go to sleep and I don't want to think about this, and I just don't want to do it. And it was far more tragic to me than something that a lot of people would think, just a financial tragedy. And so you can't really put a value on someone's, what would overwhelm them, right? Because it's really personal, right? It's a really personal thing.
Look, as I say, same shit, different day. We all have it. It's whether we choose to deal with it now or wait till it gets greater. And F, the school society needs to drop that F, because we're not even allowed to say the F word, and in school. So they need to drop that F when you get a grade. But, you would have studied hard and you would have had a realistic expectation that maybe you would have got a C or a B or something. Maybe you thought, I'm not going to get an A, but I've studied. I've put 30 hours at least into studying for this exam, and this is what I get, an F. So you had an unrealistic expectation that you were going to all the study you were doing, you were going to get a grade from it, and then your overwhelm kicked in, and you went into that, what are my parents going to say, which is what society going to say? Am I going to have to repeat my year at school? I remember failing, we have a thing called school certificate, and I remember that was like, for me, one of the most traumatic things at school was I went away. I told all my friends at school that I was going to another school for a year at boarding school. I went away for a year and I failed the three main things, which was English, maths, and science. No, English, maths, geography. You see, I can't even remember because it's so unimportant now. And I remember having to come back the next year when I came back to my old school, and I had to repeat that same year again. And I was mortified. And so I was depressed. I didn't want to go to school. I created symptoms in my body that, I've got an illness, Mum, I've got this tummy ache, I can't do this. I'm doing this, I've got this, I can't go to school, until we actually had a look and realized that I was fearful of going to school because I was, going to be labeled a loser, a big fat loser for having to repeat my same year when all my friends had gone up. But the blessings I got out of that were incredible. Once I'd worked out what had happened to me and why it happened to me, and I finally recognized that, okay, I'm going to have to suck it up. At this age, I don't have choices that I can do. So I have to do what society says. I do have to go back to school and face it no matter what. When you're older, you do have a little bit more choice, but when you're 16, you just have to listen to your parents to a certain degree. And I did go back to school, but what I did was I put my head down and I did that study, and I also studied another 3 classes for the next year, and so I took on nine classes that year. So the benefits were I learned how to study, I learned how to be diligent, I learned how to put my head down, I learned how to work under pressure, and I came away from there with 2 years of study built into 1 year. And then I left school. So I ticked the box and then went, done it, don't need to do it anymore. I've proved to myself, I've proved to others I can do it. And now I can back away. And that's when I started working at age 17. School wasn't for me. But I learned a huge lesson from that. But I was hideously depressed, and that's when the mind and body link was working together to tell me, time for you to deal with this, love.
Well, and so you were able to recognize that, and what I'm seeing and through our discussions is that everyone has this threshold to a point where they can get pretty deep into some issues, and they can get pretty deep into some problems. And there's a point to where they can suck it up, tighten the belt. And you know what? I have the resolve. I'm going to plow through this, and they can do it. But there is always that point that goes just beyond that. And that's a pivot point in a lot of people. And that's the people that you really, have an expertise in helping people that may find themselves in a place where they can't bring that resolve up. They can't do that themselves. They can't bring it out because they don't recognize. It's almost, I'm thinking people don't realize if I was walking down the street and I had a 30-pound, jacket on, and I may be thinking, wow, this is just really tough. Life is tough. Walking is tough. And then, someone like you would come up, well, you know what? Here's a thought. Why don't you take that jacket off? And we realize, wow, there is relief from this. I just couldn't see it. So, what is the point, or how do you help someone recognize that, you may think that this is the bottom, you may think this is insurmountable, but, and through the methods that you use, you oftentimes can show them that light, that, like we talked about, you can show them that door, that here's the way to move out of this, and not just a way to get back to zero, but a way to take that experience that they've had and actually enhance their life beyond, what they probably thought was even possible because of that, what they felt was that tragic experience. So, talk about that, how it's not just about recovering, but it's about being able to use that to such a greater benefit than you had before.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that really knocked me what I learned was with most of my clients was humiliation. What is society going to say if if this happens to me. Like for me, I was a single mum, and I remember having fear of telling my mother that I was pregnant at 26. No, I wasn't pregnant at 12 or I wasn't pregnant at 14, but I was humiliated to think I'm going to have to tell my mother I'm pregnant to a man at 26. Like that to me was humiliating. And it was that fear of having to go forward. So, I wanted to get my blanket and hide under my blanket. I didn't want to deal with reality, and so that's another part of, depression. So I think, the key way is to deal with it is just know that we all have stuff going on in our lives. We are the same, and your shit is probably no different to my shit that's going on in your life, but you choose to hide yours. But I can actually still see that you're not happy. If you have a friend who talks a lot and then they come to you and they catch up with you and they're not talking and they're not communicating, something's up, and you say to them, "How are you going?" "I'm fine." "Oh, great. What's been going on in your week?" "Oh, nothing. That's not them, whereas they're usually full on chat. So there's something going on, but they don't want to tell you because maybe you've got burdens yourself or this affects you. So they're sitting in a state of, I can't tell you. So it's that humiliation of having to shame and guilt that's going on. And that shame and guilt will ruin you. It'll ruin you so much. It'll take you down. And until you learn to live with it and deal it, and the key is to be grateful for that, of what you've done. So for me, so going back to my school exams, I had to be grateful that I counted my blessings. I had to be grateful that, failing those at boarding school was, as much as it was humiliating and having to go back where I told everyone, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to go do this, sit myself on the pedestal, put myself in the air like I'm this big I am. And, of course, the universe went, "Oh, let's give her a lesson. Let's knock her off a pedestal and take her down a few pegs or what." And, so I counted my blessings, and it's your blessings, be grateful for what you've got because you don't know what's around the corner. Be grateful for that I failed that lesson because look how it drove me. It drove me to sit, no other person at that school sat 5th and 6th form in the same year. And, nobody else has done that in that school. But I was determined to do that so I could prove to myself, but mainly put that middle finger up in the air to the school who went, "Oh, you have to go back and sit your last year all over again." So it was about that having the phoenix rise from the flame, getting out there and doing that. So it was about what blessings it has happened, whatever challenges happen to you, what blessings can you take out of it, and gratitude, and be grateful for this to move forward.
Well, it sounds to me, one of the really interesting things is, when you talk about being grateful to the gratitude, and then the one thing that you really opened my eyes to, that it seems so obvious, but I didn't realize it till you started to explain this, and that's where the clarity came in, is, when you talk about shame and guilt, right? What I never thought about is when these things occur, these insurmountable, pieces of life that everybody experiences, whether it's, a spouse coming in and saying, "I'm gone, I'm going off to, I already have someone else, I'm leaving," or a person that's at a place and something's going on at work that they didn't realize that is a big issue. And that thought and that what depression or that overwhelm isn't necessarily something internal. When you start talking about shame and guilt, I realized that the source of all this is, what are other people going to think?
Yeah.
Not necessarily this internal pain of, oh my, what have I done to myself? It's not an internal, self-contained thing. It seems like almost all of the overwhelm or the big tragedy part of it is, what are other people going to think? My wife, my husband just left me. What is my family? What are my friends? What are the neighbors going to think? This terrible thing, happened at work. I'm in charge. What are people going to think about my skills? What are people going to think about the job I've done? How much do you see of that the big bulk of this, the overwhelm, the hurricane that comes, is external, where people are worried about what others are going to think about them because of this happening?
Oh my God, that is daily. That is daily. And that is, society, we put ourselves in our own bubble and our own pedestal. Some people think they're good looking. Some people think they're not good looking. Some people think they're intelligent. Some people don't think they're intelligent, but we compare ourselves to others. We go, oh God, Jack is such an amazing interviewer. I wish I was like him. I wish I was articulate in a radio interview. Oh my gosh, he's so amazing. So they subordinate to other people and they don't want to go forward. And that's that minimization that we have out there that we do. And we all do this. Celebrities do it. Children do it. CEOs do it. They compare their revenue turnover to last year's person. They compare all their general managers together. We all compare each other, and it's actually about loving and appreciating that person for who they are and for what job they do. Don't compare them to other people. Just know that they've got just as many skills as other people, but they will choose their skills, and you will see their skills when they're more inspired. And they will come more alive. But when they're not as inspired, that's when they will drag their feet and kick their feet at work and do those lethargic things. And I call them brown cardigan slippers. Now, nothing wrong with wearing a brown cardigan slippers, but you've got those people in the workplace who have been around for 20 years and they are the brown cardigan slippers, and society keeps changing around them. The business keeps changing, but they're still stuck in, when they were employed 20 years ago. They think they've got entitlement because they've been there 20 years. They need to have, a pay rise or anything like that. And they're the ones who are dragging their feet. So it's actually about, for you as an employer, to be grateful for them. What blessings are they teaching you? Are they teaching you to do certain things? Are they teaching you to communicate with certain people? Are they teaching you to, what knowledge do they have from 20 years ago when they first come on board? Find out what they're inspired about. Find out what they love to do, and give them more of those tasks, and take away their own brown slipper moments. Give them more inspiring tasks that they love to do, that they're good at, and you'll find them come alive. And then they're not going to have shame and humiliation, because they've got shame and humiliation that they've been around 20 years. They're still maybe on $20 an hour when a new person's come in who's only 18. This person could be 50. They're on $20 an hour. A new person who's 18's come in and they're on $40 an hour. So that's humiliating for that person who's been there for 20 years. And they're hating their job. They're hating the person who's employed them. They're hating the 18-year-old. But they're not seeing what life's actually about. So they're ungrateful and they're disgruntled, and they're going to be the depressed people who are going to bring people down. So give them key tasks that they're inspired about. Give them things that they love to do. Encourage them to learn more and educate, but talk in their values and find out what they want to do and what did they do 20 years ago and how did the business boom 20 years ago. Yes, society's changed for social media and marketing and that, but there's some still golden stuff that my nana and my parents talk about, and my parents are 60 odd, and they're incredibly intelligent when they talk about running a business when they first started out. My mum has a brain like that, but then there's other times she's shut down and I'm just like, oh my God, you're so dumb. But then there's other times she's really intelligent. When I talk to her about business, she's alive. She's that. So I do compare myself to my mother, and I'm slowly owning the traits of my mother and seeing them, how it's helping me in my business.
There's a saying that comes to mind, and I'm paraphrasing just simply because I don't remember, is the tragedy in one's life is not necessarily the suffering they endure, but the suffering that they miss out on. And one of the things, like we talked about, that you do is turn that suffering, that situation, that overwhelming, circumstance. And once you overcome it, it can turn around because it gives you an opportunity to build new skills, to be able to build resolve on things that you didn't have those skills before. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe give some examples of how, once someone comes out of this overwhelm and realizes, okay, I need to face this, and, oftentimes it's not as bad as they thought it was going to be, but then how they can actually take that as a learning experience and build on that to actually build a better life than they may have had before this circumstance occurred?
Yeah, well, anything that happens to you, whether it's a great thing or a tragedy, it's about counting your blessings. Count your blessings, and I say count your blessings because it's just be bloody grateful. You don't know what's around the corner. So when someone challenges you, be grateful for that challenge. Find out, how did it serve you? There's 7 areas of life. So recently I've been working with a gentleman who's a large corporation, and he's found out his employees, 2 of his employees have been stealing. Now he's really torn because he has found out that they're stealing, but one of those employees is related to his wife. So he's torn vocationally on what to do. If he fires him, what's going to happen? Financially, if he fires him, he's now going to have to find a replacement. So is the business going to go down in that process of the next 8 weeks, 12 weeks to find a replacement? If we get a temp in there, suddenly, we've got to train them up, etc. Physically, he's completely drained because he just doesn't know what to do. Family, when he goes home and has to tell his wife, this is what's going on, that's where he's going to get the shame and guilt. And he's now starting to beat himself up for, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't recognize this. This has been going on. He's found out this has been going on for nearly 6 months. So he's now trying to find out how far back it's actually been going on because he feels he's failed as a manager to not recognize what's been going on in his team. He thought, I had it all. I had everything. So for him, it's about finding the blessings in this challenge, being grateful for what's going on. So we did some work this week, and we worked out, the challenging thing is he's actually spoken up. One of the blessings is he's spoken up, and he's spoken to somebody who's an old squash mate who we used to play squash with. And he said, oh my God, I've just had someone who I've just done the exact same process that you've gone through. I can help you with putting cameras in your team. I can help you with your HR contracts. I can get the right person for you. I know the police who can help you do that if you want to do that. I can help you with an HR person, to find recruitment in your role. Now, so for him, he had his head buried in the sand for the last, obviously, 6 months, not recognised this has been going on. So, he's had the big slap across the face to go, wake up, this is what's happening to him. So just because he's woken up and he's opened his mouth, he's already found one person, and this is not rare but very rare, that he's found one person who can actually solve most of his problems of saying, oh my gosh, I can tell you how to handle that. I can help you with a temp. I can help you with, HR solutions. I can help you with, video cameras, etc. So he's actually found the one instead of the many who he can communicate with and help work from this. And at the moment, I'm working through his mind with recognizing what's going on. Why did he drop his eye off the ball? He had a real unrealistic expectation that this person was going to work with him forever under this certain hourly rate and not steal for him. But the person was depressed, labeled depressed, because he believed that he's worked for him for so long. He should be giving him a pay rise. He's also a relative, so you should be giving me more than anyone else who's on here. So it's just about him, the employer, counting their blessings, finding out, gosh, I'm actually lucky I found out now, and he's only stolen $30,000, whereas if I'd let this go on for another year, my business could be, 3, 4, 500, $500,000, $1 million down the track that's been stolen out of my business. So it's just about being grateful for what you've got and counting your blessings and finding out, how did it serve me? When they did that, how did that serve me? And just writing them down and just keep going until you can go, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful they've done that. I've only, it could have been far worse. And he said, I could be down $1 million. In a year's time, I could be down $1 million in my business, but it's only cost me $30,000. That's where he had a tear of gratitude. He said, this person only cost me $30,000.
Yeah, that's a very big lesson, incredible lesson. To do, and the fact that someone like you can come in and help him recognize that, not just recognize that, but also how to recognize a solution to this problem. And I'm sure a big part of that was his worry about, well, what are people going to think? He had family members involved. What are the other family members going to think?
His wife, that's his shame and guilt. His worst thing wasn't that, he's beating himself up because he didn't recognize this and he's wondering who else and what else has gone on. But he has to go home and tell his wife. And that's where he's now getting sickness. And so that's why she's saying to him, honey, why are you working till midnight? Why are you at the business till midnight? And then you're coming home. And so he's coming home now at midnight or, a little bit later. And then he's up out of the door at 5 o'clock. So he doesn't have to address her. The poor bugger's in absolute turmoil because he just doesn't want to face it, and so that's now causing conflict because she's now going, why are you at work? What's going on? Is something happening at work? Are you having an affair? She's now, her mind's going crazy into overwhelm. And the truth is he just doesn't want to face her and say, by the way, your relative's been doing this, this, and this.
And there's always a solution.
Oh, absolutely. It's not as big as what we think. It's not as big as what we think. And I believe it's easy for me to say it's not as big. But the moment you start talking, you actually put your hand up and say, I'm in the shit, I need some help. There's phew. That weight has been lifted off your back. And then we work through the blessings, and then we work through what's going on, and then we work through your strategy steps of how to get through this, and I'm talking to him today, and I can't wait to finalize so he can go home and tell his wife, guess what's happened to me? And he can say it with a tear of gratitude because he can say, this is how it's benefited me. This is what I've learned from it. This is how it's benefited us as a family. This is how I love you, and I wanted to resolve this before I spoke to you fully about it. But he's sitting in this hole for the last week and a half of turmoil. Personally, I wish he had actually picked up the phone straight away as soon as he, instead of waiting a week to talk to me.
Yeah, that's it. The solutions. That's just the thing that I think people get out of this is there's a solution. They may not see it. I think of, I felt sorry for myself because I had no shoes until I met a man that had no feet. And to have that gratitude right there changes the whole perspective. And I think that's the one thing that I think if you boil it down, what your just power is, and the way that why I consider you an influencer is your ability to show people a perspective that is so greater and so much brighter and so much more optimistic than they would ever be able to see for themselves. Debz Cooper, how can folks find out more about you and that there is a way out of this overwhelm? There is a way to take the weights off the shoulder.
My website is www.debzcooper.com, debzcooper.com. And that's the best form of getting hold of me. Look, there's always a blessing in the crisis. And even though it may be a tragedy at the time, how many times do you later on down the track look back and you go, oh my gosh, that boyfriend who cheated on me, wow, he gave me so much. He actually allowed me to go, travel overseas. He allowed me to do this. He saved me money, but we may not see it. We may recognize it 2 years down the track because he cheated on me. I found the man of my dreams or whatever. But the truth is, if you can resolve that straight away, you will just be freer in your mind and your body. You're going to be staying on purpose of where you're going. You're not going to get distracted by, weird shit that's going to come in. You're actually going to be knowing where you're going, what you're doing, and you're not going to feel like you need your blanket to hide under. Powerful stuff. Debz Cooper, debzcooper.com. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing this. It's been remarkable, more than I anticipated as far as, being able to open up these doors and these light for folks. And I know a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this. So once again, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you so much, Jack, for having me. And thank you to the listeners for listening to me bleat. Oh, no. Very good. Folks, there it is, debzcooper.com. There'll be a link right there on the show post. Very, very powerful stuff. So until next time, remember, you are the only real game changer.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/influencersradio.